The rain wouldn't stop. I remember that more than anything else about the night I died. The way it hammered against the windshield of my Honda Civic like tiny fists demanding to be let in. The way it turned the streets of Cambridge into rivers of black glass, reflecting the streetlights in long, distorted streaks. The way it seemed to know something I didn't. That my world was about to end long before my car would wrap itself around that oak tree on Brattle Street. But in getting ahead of myself, let me start at the real beginning. The one that mattered. The one that made everything else make sense. Even though at the time it felt like the universe had taken a sledgehammer to my chest. Harvard Law School. Final exams in 3 days. And my boyfriend of 2 years, Ethan Reed, was supposed to be studying. That's what he told me. Anyway, babe, I can't do dinner tonight. His voice crackled through my phone speaker, tinny and distant like he was calling from the bottom of a well. Professor Morrison's study group is meeting at the library. And you know how he gets if you miss more than one session. I was in my tiny studio apartment on Mass Avenue, surrounded by highlighters and casebooks and empty coffee cups that had started growing things I didn't want to identify. Constitutional law had been kicking my ass for 3 months. And the final was worth 60% of our grade. 60%. One test. One day. One chance to prove that I belonged here. That I wasn't just some girl from a public high school in Worcester who'd gotten lucky on the LSAT. No problem, I said. And I meant it. Ethan was preppy and privileged and sometimes condescending in ways he didn't even realize. But he was also driven. Ambitious. He wanted to be a Supreme Court clerk someday. And ID always respected that about him. He'll just order takeout and drill torts. Call me when you're done. Always, he said. And I heard the smile in his voice. Love you. Mia. Love you too. I hung up and stared at my phone for a long moment. Something felt off. Not wrong. Exactly. Just off. Like when you walk into a room and forget why you came in. And there's this buzzing in your brain that tells you you've missed something important. I shook it off. Final stress. That's all it was. 3 hours later. I couldn't shake it anymore. ID tried to study. I really had. But my eyes kept sliding off the pages of my textbook like they were coated in Teflon. And every time I closed my eyes I saw Ethan's face. Not his good face. The one he showed me. All easy smiles and warm eyes and love you. Mia. No. I kept seeing a version of him ID never seen before. A version with a tight jaw and cold eyes and lips pressed into a thin line of annoyance. I'd been having dreams about him lately. Bad ones. Dreams where I caught him in lies. Where I found texts on his phone that made my stomach drop. Where he looked at me like I was a stranger he was trapped with. I'd wake up sweaty and breathless and reach for my phone to text him. Just to hear him say something reassuring. But you can't text someone out of a dream. And lately, the reassurance felt thinner than it used to. Stop it, I said out loud, slapping my own cheeks. He's at the library. He's studying. You're being paranoid because you haven't slept more than 4 hours a night since March. I grabbed my keys. I told myself I was just going to get coffee. The library had a 24-hour cafe. And I needed caffeine like I needed oxygen. If I happened to swing by the study rooms on the 3rd floor where Professor Morrison's group usually met, that was just coincidence. The library was mostly empty at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. A few desperate souls hunched over laptops in the main reading room, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of screens. The security guard nodded at me as I swiped my ID card. And I nodded back, heart hammering in my chest for no reason I could name. I didn't go to the cafe first. I took the stairs to the 3rd floor, 2 at a time, my sneakers squeaking on the polished concrete. The study rooms were at the end of a long hallway lined with windows that looked out onto the quad. Most of them were dark, empty, their glass walls reflecting my own anxious face back at me. But the last one on the left, the one with the good views and the whiteboard that took up an entire wall, that one had its lights on. And the blinds were drawn. Ethan hated the blinds drawn. He said they made him feel claustrophobic, like he was studying in a coffin. He always pulled them up, even when the afternoon sun turned the room into a greenhouse. I stopped walking. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to turn around, to go get my coffee, to go home and go to sleep and pretend I'd never come here. But my feet wouldn't listen. They kept moving, one step after another, carrying me toward that closed door like I was on rails. I pressed my ear to the glass. At first, I didn't hear anything. Just the hum of the HVAC system and the distant sound of someone coughing 2 floors down. I was about to convince myself that I was being insane, that the room was probably empty and I'd just imagined the lights. When a laugh, a girl's laugh, high and fake and flirtatious. The kind of laugh you use when someone says something that isn't funny, but you want them to think it is. And then Ethan's voice, low and warm. You're terrible. You know that, right? I try, the girl said. And I knew that voice. I'd heard it 100 times in the past 3 months. Always attached to a face that was too perfect and a smile that was too sweet. Tiffany Bates. The transfer student from UCLA who'd shown up in January with her blonde hair and her big blue eyes and her constant, cloying need for help with the coursework. The help she always seemed to ask Ethan for. I should have known. Every instinct I'd ignored for weeks. The way she touched his arm when she laughed. The way he lingered when he said goodbye to her. The way they'd both get quiet when I walked into a room. It all clicked into place with the sickening finality of a puzzle piece snapping home. I didn't knock. I didn't announce myself. I just pushed the door open. The blinds were drawn, but they'd forgotten to lock the door. They were on the couch. The small gray couch that was supposed to be for group study sessions. The one that barely fit 3 people sitting upright. Ethan was on his back, shirtless, his chest pale and smooth in the fluorescent light. Tiffany was straddling him, her skirt hiked up around her hips, her blouse unbuttoned to reveal a lacy black bra that looked expensive and deliberately chosen. They froze. For one perfect, crystalline second. Nobody moved. Tiffany's mouth was half open, caught mid-laugh. Ethan's hands were on her waist, fingers curled into her skin like he was holding on for dear life. His eyes met mine, and I watched the emotions flicker across his face. Shock, then fear, then something that looked almost like relief. Like he was glad to be caught. What the fuck? I said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even an accusation. It was just the only thing my brain could form. The only words that would come out of a mouth that suddenly felt like it was full of sand. Mia. Ethan shoved Tiffany off him so hard she nearly fell off the couch. He scrambled to his feet, reaching for his shirt, his hands shaking so badly he couldn't get his arms through the sleeves. Mia. I can explain. It's not what it looks like. What does it look like? My voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before something breaks. Because it looks like you're fucking your study buddy on the couch where we used to make out after lectures. Tiffany had the decency to look embarrassed. She pulled her blouse closed, not bothering with the buttons, and tucked her hair behind her ears in a nervous gesture that made her look about 12 years old. Mia. I'm so sorry. We didn't mean for you to find out this way. Didn't mean for me to find out at all. You mean... I looked at Ethan. How long? Mia. How long? Ethan. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stood there in his rumpled button-down, his hair sticking up in the back, looking like a little boy who'd been caught stealing cookies. A few weeks. Maybe a month. I don't know. 3 months. Tiffany said quietly. Ethan whipped his head around to stare at her. Tiff. What the hell? She deserves the truth. Tiffany's voice was steadier now. She'd stopped looking embarrassed and started looking almost proud. 3 months. Since February. We've been seeing each other since February. February. That was before the transfer students even arrived. That was when Tiffany had supposedly been settling in and needing extra help and just so grateful to Ethan for showing her around. 3 months. 3 months of lying to my face. 3 months of love you, Mia, and can't wait to see you, and you're the only one for me. 3 months of making me feel crazy for being suspicious, for asking questions, for noticing that something wasn't right. You're a fucking sociopath, I said. I wasn't sure which one of them I was talking to. Maybe both. Mia, please. Ethan took a step toward me, his hands outstretched like he was approaching a wounded animal. Please. Just let me explain. It didn't mean anything. She doesn't mean anything to me. You're the one I love. I laughed. I actually laughed. A short, bitter bark of sound that seemed to surprise all three of us. You have her on top of you, half naked. And you're telling me she doesn't mean anything. What was this? Then, Charity. Were you doing her a favor? Tiffany stood up, smoothing her skirt down with hands that no longer trembled. He's not lying, she said. It really didn't mean anything. Not to him. Stay out of this. Ethan snapped. No. I think I'm done staying out of things. Tiffany walked toward me, and I noticed for the first time that she was taller than me. She had always seemed smaller before. Daintier. Like a china doll you had to be careful with. Now she looked like a predator sizing up its prey. You should know, Mia, he's not the catch you think he is. He's weak. He's scared of his mother. He'll say anything to anyone to keep them happy. Tiffany, shut up. He was never going to leave you. She continued, ignoring him. That's not what this was about. He just wanted someone to make him feel special. Someone who didn't know about his mom's expectations or his dad's money or the fact that he's been skating by on connections his whole life. She smiled. And it was ugly. I was just a distraction. And so are you. Really. Just a more permanent one. I should have been hurt by that. I should have been furious or devastated or something other than what I actually was. Which was calm, cold, clear. You're both pathetic, I said, and I meant it. I turned and walked out. Ethan called after me. I heard his footsteps on the concrete floor, heard him stumble in the hallway, heard Tiffany say something sharp and low that made him stop. I didn't look back. I walked down the stairs, through the main reading room, past the security guard, and out into the rain. The rain was worse than before. It was coming down in sheets now, so thick I could barely see the buildings across the street. My car was parked in the lot behind the library, and by the time I got to it, I was soaked through, my hair plastered to my scalp, my clothes clinging to my skin like a second layer of cold. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, just breathing. My phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. Ethan. Mia, please come back, Ethan. I love you, Ethan. She doesn't mean anything, I swear, Ethan. Please just talk to me. Turned the phone off and threw it in the passenger seat. The drive home was a blur. I don't remember pulling out of the parking lot. I don't remember turning onto Brattle Street. I don't remember the stoplights or the other cars or the way the windshield wipers couldn't keep up with the water pounding against the glass. I remember the headlights, bright and white and coming straight at me from the wrong direction, because the other driver had run a red light. Or maybe I had. Or maybe neither of us had, and the rain had just made everything invisible. I remember the screech of tires on wet pavement. I remember the world spinning, the sickening lurch of my stomach as the car left the ground, the shatter of glass like 1,000 tiny screams. I remember the tree, old and thick and immovable, rising up out of the darkness like a monument to all the things that would never change. And then I didn't remember anything at all. I woke up gasping. My hands flew to my chest, to my face, to my arms, feeling for wounds that weren't there. My skin was whole. My bones were intact. My heart was beating fast but steady, like it had never stopped at all. I was in my bed. My studio apartment on Mass Avenue. The same one ID left hours ago. Or maybe not hours. Because the light coming through the window was wrong. It was morning. Golden and warm and completely different from the dark. Rain-soaked night ID just driven through. My phone was on the nightstand. I grabbed it with shaking hands. The date. May 15th. 2 months before finals. 2 months before the library. 2 months before the crash that should have killed me. A text message lit up the screen. Ethan. Can't wait to see you at breakfast, babe. I stared at it. And then I started to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It wasn't even a crazy laugh. Though I probably sounded both. It was the laugh of someone who had just been given something impossible. Something miraculous. Something that shouldn't exist. A second chance. I thought about the way Tiffany had looked at me in that study room. Her eyes cold and satisfied. I thought about the way Ethan had lied to me. Every day for 3 months. Without flinching. I thought about the way ID died. Alone. Betrayed. Convinced that I had been the problem. That I hadn't been enough. That if ID'd just been a little better. A little prettier. A little more fun. Maybe he would have stayed. I thought about all of it. And then I made a decision. This time. I wouldn't confront him. I wouldn't give him the chance to lie. To gaslight. To make me feel crazy. I wouldn't cry or scream or beg him to explain. This time. I would smile. I would play along. I would be the perfect girlfriend. The one he thought he wanted. The one who never asked questions and never got suspicious and never, ever made him feel guilty. And when the time was right, I would destroy him. I picked up my phone and typed back. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I hit send. And then I whispered to the empty room. To the ghosts of the life ID lost. To whatever cosmic force had decided to give me another shot. This time. You don't get to break me. I break you. The first thing I did was text my therapist. Well, technically. I texted my therapist's office to schedule an appointment. But what I really wanted to do was text my therapist directly and say, "Hey, Dr. Chin. I died and came back to life with all my memories intact, and also my boyfriend is cheating on me and am going to ruin his life. Thoughts?" I didn't do that. Obviously. Because even in my new, revenge-fueled state, I had enough self-awareness to recognize that was not a normal thing to say to a mental health professional. Instead, I booked a session for the following Tuesday and told myself I'd figure out how much to share when I got there. Breakfast was at the Harvard Grill, a campus cafe that served overpriced avocado toast and coffee that tasted like burnt regret. Ethan was already there when I arrived, which was unusual. He was normally the kind of person who showed up 10 minutes late to everything, including his own birthday party. He looked up when I walked in, and his face lit up with a smile that, in my previous life, would have made my heart flutter. Now it just made me feel cold. "Hey, beautiful," he said, standing up to pull out my chair. "Such a gentleman. You look amazing." I did. Actually. ID put on my favorite sundress. The yellow one had bought me for our 1-year anniversary. And done my hair in loose waves that fell over my shoulders. I looked like the kind of girl who had never been betrayed. Never died. Never spent 2 months plotting revenge from beyond the grave. Because in this timeline, none of that had happened yet. "Thanks, babe," I said, leaning in to kiss his cheek. His skin was warm and familiar, and I had to fight the urge to flinch away. "You look tired. Did you study too late?" He shrugged, picking up his coffee cup. "Couldn't sleep. Just stressed about finals. I guess, in the original timeline, had been sleeping with Tiffany by now." It was May 15th. 3 months before the library. 3 months before the crash. The affair had already started. I realized. It had been going on for at least a few weeks. The thought made bile rise in my throat. But I swallowed it down with a smile. "I know what you need." I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. A break. Let's do something fun this weekend. Just the two of us. His eyes flickered. Just for a second. Something passed across his face. Guilt. Irritation. Relief. And then it was gone. Replaced by that charming, easy grin I used to love. Really? What about the con law outline? I'll study extra this week. We can afford one weekend off. I squeezed his fingers. Come on, Ethan. When's the last time we had a real date? Just us. He hesitated. I could see him calculating, weighing his options, trying to figure out if he could get away with whatever had been planning with Tiffany that weekend. In the original timeline, I'd been clingy, needy. I'd wanted to spend every free moment with him, and my neediness had driven him away. Had told me that once, during a fight we'd had about a month before the crash. You're suffocating me, Mia, had said. I can't breathe. So this time, I'd do the opposite. I'd be cool. I'd be easy. I'd give him all the space he wanted. And then some. I'd make him feel like he had the best of both worlds. A devoted girlfriend at home and a secret side piece in the shadows. And when he got comfortable, when he thought he'd figured out how to have it all without getting caught, that's when I'd strike. Okay, he said finally, squeezing my hand back. Weekend trip. Just us. I'll book something. Perfect. I picked up my menu and hid my smile behind it. Over the next few weeks, I became the girlfriend Ethan had always wanted. I stopped asking where he was going. I stopped texting him every hour. I stopped getting jealous when I saw him talking to other girls. Stopped making passive-aggressive comments about his female friends. Stopped checking his phone when he left it unattended. I became a ghost of myself. Pleasant. Agreeable. Always there when he wanted me and never there when he didn't. And it worked. Babe, you've been so chill lately, he said one night. About 3 weeks into my performance. We were lying in his bed. The sheets tangled around our legs. And he was tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. I don't know what changed. But I like it. I tilted my head to look at him. My expression soft and adoring. I just realized I was being crazy. You've never given me a reason not to trust you. I paused, letting my eyes fill with what I hoped looked like gratitude. I'm sorry I was so insecure before. I'm working on it. His hand stilled on my shoulder. For a moment, I thought I'd overdone it, laid the sweetness on too thick. But then he pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my forehead. You're perfect, he said. I don't deserve you. No, you don't, I thought. But I smiled and snuggled into his chest and let him hold me. I was lying there, pretending to fall asleep, when his phone buzzed on the nightstand. His hand shot out to grab it. Too fast. Too desperate. And I felt his body tense as he read whatever message had come through. Is everything okay? I murmured, keeping my eyes closed. Yeah, just a study group thing. Go back to sleep. I didn't. I lay there with my eyes closed, breathing slowly and evenly, while he typed out a response and then shoved the phone back under his pillow. Study group thing. Right. The next morning, I waited until he was in the shower and then I went through his phone. I'd learned his passcode months ago. His mother's birthday, which was pathetic and obvious and exactly the kind of thing he'd use. In the original timeline, I'd never checked his phone because I'd trusted him. Because I'd been a good girlfriend who respected his privacy. That Mia was dead. The messages were right there in his texts. Not even hidden. He hadn't bothered to delete them because he thought I'd never look. Because I'd never looked before. Tiffany. Same place as last time. Ethan. Can't tonight. Mia wants to have dinner. Tiffany. So bring her. I don't mind. Ethan. She wouldn't understand. Tiffany. Understand what? That you're bored with her. That she's predictable and needy and you're only with her because your mom likes her. Ethan. Don't be like that. Tiffany. I'm just saying what you want. You don't love her. Ethan. You love the idea of her. There's a difference. I read the messages 3 times, committing them to memory. Then I took screenshots and sent them to myself, deleting the evidence from his phone afterward. My hands were shaking, but my heart was steady. He didn't love me. I'd known that, on some level, even before I died. But seeing it in writing, in his own words, or at least in his silent agreement with Tiffany's words, made it real in a way that catching them together never had. Because catching them together was just one moment. One mistake. Something he could explain away. Excuse. Apologize for. But these texts, sent over weeks and months, full of casual cruelty and casual dismissal. This was who he was. This was how Had always felt. I put the phone back under his pillow and went to make breakfast. Tiffany transferred into our con law seminar about a week later. In the original timeline, I'd been friendly to her, welcoming. I'd invited her to study groups and offered to share my notes and generally treated her like a human being who deserved kindness. This time, I did the exact same thing. Hi. You must be Tiffany, I said, beaming at her from across the seminar table. I'm Mia. I heard you're transferring from UCLA. That must be so hard. Coming in the middle of the semester. Let me know if you need anything. Okay. She blinked at me, clearly surprised by the warmth. Her eyes flicked to Ethan, who was sitting next to me, and I saw something pass between them. A warning. Maybe. Or a promise. Thanks, she said, her voice soft and grateful. That's really sweet of you. Over the next few weeks, I watched the affair unfold in real time. I watched Tiffany bring Ethan coffee before class, laughing at his jokes and touching his arm and making him feel like the most interesting man in the world. I watched Ethan eat it up, preening under her attention like a peacock showing off its feathers. I watched them sneak glances at each other during lectures, texts exchanged under desks, quick meetings in the hallway that were just a little too long to be innocent. And I said nothing. I smiled. I chatted with Tiffany like we were friends. I invited her to join our study group and offered to share my outlines and pretended not to notice when her hand brushed against Ethan's under the table. You're being really nice to her, Ethan said one night, his voice careful. I thought you might be jealous or something. Why would I be jealous? I asked, looking up from my laptop. She's nice. And she needs friends. It must be lonely. Being new. He studied my face for a long moment, searching for something. Suspicion. Maybe. Or hurt. He didn't find it. Because ID learned how to hide those things. ID learned how to make my face a mask of pleasant nothing, revealing only what I wanted him to see. You're amazing. You know that. He said finally. I know, I said, and smiled. One night, I followed them. It was stupid and risky, and I knew it. But I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to confirm that the affair was still happening, that my memories were accurate, that this timeline was following the same path as the last one. They met behind the gym, in a dark alcove between the building and the parking garage. I watched from behind a dumpster, my phone in my hand, ready to take pictures. Tiffany was the one who kissed him first. She pushed him against the brick wall and went up on her toes and pressed her mouth to his like she was starving and he was the only food in the world. He responded immediately, his hands going to her waist, his fingers digging into the soft fabric of her dress. I took 12 photos. When they finally pulled apart, I heard Tiffany laugh. That same high, fake laugh I remembered from the study room. She really has no idea. Does she? None, Ethan said, and he sounded almost smug about it. She trusts me completely. It's almost too easy. Don't get bored, Tiffany warned. tracing a finger down his chest. I'd hate to have to find someone else to play with. You're the only one I want to play with. I almost threw up. I stayed behind the dumpster until they left, holding hands like teenagers, disappearing around the corner of the gym. Then I stood up, dusted off my jeans, and walked home. The photos were safely stored in a hidden folder on my phone, backed up to the cloud, untouchable. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about what I was going to do. The plan was still forming. I knew I wanted to ruin him, but I hadn't figured out the details yet. I wanted it to be public, humiliating, the kind of thing that would follow him for the rest of his life. I wanted him to lose everything. And then, maybe, I'd finally feel like I'd gotten even. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I was in the cafeteria 3 days later, eating a sad salad and pretending to read a case brief, when a shadow fell over my table. I looked up. Tiffany stood there, tray in hand, her smile sharp as a knife. Mind if I sit? It's a free country. She sat down across from me, her eyes never leaving my face. She didn't touch her food. She just stared at me, like she was waiting for something. Can I help you? I asked, not bothering to hide my irritation. I saw you, she said quietly, behind the gym. You were watching us. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my face neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Mia, I saw the flash of your phone. You took pictures. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. What are you going to do with them? Show Ethan. Ruin his life. Why would I want to ruin his life? I asked, tilting my head in mock confusion. He's my boyfriend. I love him. Tiffany laughed. It was an ugly sound, harsh and mocking. You don't love him. You love the idea of him. There's a difference. She was quoting his text messages. She knew I'd seen them. You're good, I said, and I meant it. You're really good. Most girls would have cracked by now, confronted me, tried to explain. But you're just enjoying this, aren't you? Her smile widened. He's not the only one who gets bored. We stared at each other across the table, two predators sizing each other up. I know what you're doing, she said finally. You're playing the long game, being the perfect girlfriend so he doesn't suspect anything, waiting for the right moment to destroy him. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm just a girl who loves her boyfriend and wants to trust him. You're lying. Am I? She leaned back in her chair, studying me with new eyes. I know you saw us. I know you have pictures. And I know you're not going to show them to him. Not yet. You're waiting for something bigger. I said nothing. What are you waiting for? Mia, she asked, her voice soft now, almost friendly. What's the endgame? I picked up my fork and speared a piece of lettuce. I don't know what you're talking about. You're a terrible liar. So are you. She laughed again, but this time it sounded almost genuine. Fine. Keep your secrets. But when you finally make your move, don't expect me to be surprised. She stood up, picked up her tray, and walked away. I watched her go, my heart pounding in my chest. She knew. Not everything. Maybe, but enough. She knew I wasn't the naive, trusting girlfriend I pretended to be. She knew I was watching, waiting, planning, and she didn't care. Because she thought she'd win. She always did. But she didn't know about the crash. She didn't know about the death. She didn't know that I'd already lost everything once. And that losing it again didn't scare me anymore. I finished my salad, packed up my books, and walked to the library. It was time to start researching poisons. The internet is a terrifying place. I'd always known that. In a vague, abstract way. I'd read the articles about dark web marketplaces and cryptocurrency and hitmen for hire. But I'd always assumed those things were distant, removed from my world of casebooks and coffee shops and student loan debt. I was wrong. It took me exactly 45 minutes to find what I was looking for. 45 minutes of careful searching, of learning the right keywords and the right forums, of separating the scams from the legitimate sellers. The compound was called beta-phenyl gamma-butyrolactone, BPGB for short. It was a research chemical, not approved for human consumption, but readily available from overseas suppliers who didn't ask questions about what you plan to do with it. The effects, according to the forum posts I found, were exactly what I needed. Severe gastrointestinal distress, migraines, short-term memory fog, and a general feeling of misery that lasted about 48 hours. No permanent damage, no long-term side effects. Nothing that would show up on a standard talk screen unless they were specifically looking for it. It was perfect. The only problem was delivery time. Most of the suppliers were in China or India, and shipping took 3 to 4 weeks. I didn't have that kind of time. Finals were in 2 months, and I needed the compound before then. That's when I remembered Leo. Leo Vasquez was my cousin on my mother's side, a genius-level chemist who'd gotten kicked out of MIT for academic misconduct, which was a nice way of saying he'd been caught selling Adderall to undergrads. He now worked in a small, unmarked lab in Somerville, doing quality control testing for a pharmaceutical company that definitely didn't know about his criminal record. And he owed me. Big time. Last year, Leo had gotten himself into a mess. A girl had been seeing had accused him of slipping something into her drink at a party. The accusation was false. I knew because I'd been at that party and seen someone else do it. But Leo didn't have proof. He was looking at expulsion, maybe even criminal charges. ID testified for him. ID told the disciplinary committee what ID seen. Vouched for his character. Risked my own academic standing to save his ass. Had gotten off with a warning. And now, he owed me. I went to his lab on a Saturday afternoon, when I knew he'd be working alone. The building was a nondescript gray box in an industrial park, sandwiched between an auto body shop and a storage unit facility. The door was locked, but Leo had given me the code months ago, back when we were still on good terms. Leo, I called out, stepping into the empty reception area. You here? In the back. His voice echoed through the hallway, followed by the sound of glass clinking against glass. I found him in the main lab, surrounded by beakers and test tubes and machines that hummed and beeped. He was wearing a white lab coat over a faded Smith's t-shirt, his dark hair sticking up in every direction like he'd just rolled out of bed. Mia. He looked up from his work. Surprised. I didn't expect to see you. Everything okay? I need a favor. He set down his pipette and crossed his arms over his chest. What kind of favor? The kind that could get us both in a lot of trouble if anyone finds out. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he sighed, pulled off his safety goggles, and gestured to a chair in the corner. Sit down and tell me what's going on. I sat. And I told him everything. Not everything. Exactly. I didn't mention the time travel or the death or the fact that I was living my life for the second time. I just told him about Ethan and Tiffany. About the affair. About the way they'd been lying to me for months. Fucking asshole. Leo muttered when I was done. I never liked that guy. You're not alone. So, what do you need? You want me to beat him up? I know a guy. I don't want him beaten up. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. I want him humiliated. I want him to lose everything. And I have a plan. But I need your help. Leo's eyes narrowed. What kind of plan? I told him about the compound. About what I wanted it to do. When I wanted it to happen. How I planned to administer it. When I finished. Leo was quiet for a long time. You're talking about poisoning someone. He said finally. I'm talking about giving someone a really bad stomachache during the most important exam of his life. It's still poisoning. It's not lethal. It's not even permanent. He'll be fine in 2 days. Leo ran a hand through his hair, messing it up even more. Mia, what you're describing. It's a crime. It's assault. If you get caught, you could go to jail. I'm not going to get caught. You don't know that. I know that I died because of him. The words came out before I could stop them. And I saw Leo's face shift from concern to confusion. What do you mean? You died. I bit my lip. Too far. I'd gone too far. I mean, I scrambled for an explanation. Something plausible. Something that wouldn't make me sound insane. I mean, part of me died. When I found out about the cheating. The person I was before. She's gone. He killed her. Leo studied my face. And I could see him deciding whether to believe me. I need this. Leo, I said softly. I need to do this. For myself. For closure. Can you help me or not? Another long silence. Then Leo walked over to a locked cabinet on the far wall, pulled a key from his pocket, and opened it. This compound, he said, pulling out a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. It's not BPGB. It's something I've been working on myself. Similar effects, but faster acting and completely untraceable after 72 hours. I've been meaning to test it. He held the vial up to the light, and the liquid sparkled like diamonds. 1 drop in a drink causes mild nausea. 2 drops cause vomiting. 3 drops cause. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Let's just say, they'll wish they were dead. How many drops do I need? Depends on what you want to happen. If you just want him to fail the exam, 2 drops will do it. He'll spend most of the test in the bathroom. And what he does manage to write will be gibberish. What about 3 drops? Leo's expression darkened. 3 drops could cause a seizure. Not a dangerous one. It won't kill him or cause brain damage. But it'll be scary. For him and for everyone around him. I thought about that for a moment. About Ethan collapsing during the exam. About the ambulance being called. About the panic and chaos and attention. It was perfect. 3 drops. I said. Leo nodded slowly. 3 drops. But you have to be careful. Mia, this stuff is potent. If you accidentally ingest it yourself, I want. Make sure you don't. He handed me the vial, and I wrapped my fingers around it, feeling the weight of it in my palm. And Mia. Yeah. If this blows up. If anyone comes asking questions. I don't know you. I've never seen you. We're not cousins. We're not friends. We've never met. Understand? I nodded. Understood. Good. He turned back to his workbench, dismissing me. Now get out of here. I have actual work to do. I slipped the vial into my pocket and walked out of the lab, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I had the weapon. Now I just needed the opportunity. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. A week after my visit to Leo, Tiffany announced to our study group that Shed started making her own. I learned the recipe from my grandmother. She said, holding up a thermos with a flourish. It's a family secret. I only share it with people I really like. She looked at Ethan when she said it. And he smiled back at her like a lovesick puppy. That's so cool. I said, my voice bright with enthusiasm. You should bring some to our next study session. I'd love to try it. Tiffany's eyes flicked to me, and I saw a flash of suspicion there. But she smiled and nodded and said, sure. I'll make a big batch. Over the next few weeks. Tiffany's became a regular feature of our study sessions. She'd bring a thermos full of the stuff. Pour cups for everyone. And watch with satisfaction as they drank it down. I never drank it. I said I was lactose intolerant. A lie. But a convenient one. And Tiffany never pushed. But I watched her make it. I watched the way she combined the ingredients. The order she added them. The way she stirred the mixture with a long wooden spoon. I watched the way she added the tapioca pearls at the very end. dropping them into the hot liquid one by one. I watched, and I learned, and I started to plan. The final exam for constitutional law was scheduled for July 15th, the same date as the original timeline, the same date ID died. This time, I wouldn't be the one caught off guard. I started spending more time with Tiffany, ingratiating myself into her good graces. I complimented her, asked her about her grandmother, pretended to care about her tedious stories from UCLA. "Why are you being so nice to me?" she asked one day, when we were alone in the library. I shrugged. Why wouldn't I be? Because you know about me and Ethan. I let my face fall. Just a little. Just enough to look vulnerable. I don't know anything for sure, I said softly. And even if I did, I love him. I want him to be happy, if that's with you. Then, I trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Tiffany stared at me, her expression unreadable. You'd just let him go, if that's what he wanted. I met her eyes, and I let her see the sadness there. The real sadness. The one I'd been carrying since the night I died. I just want him to be honest with me. If he's going to leave, I want him to say it to my face. Tiffany was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched my arm, her fingers cool against my skin. "He's not going to leave you," she said, and her voice was surprisingly gentle. "He's too scared of his mother." His mother. Caroline. Tiffany's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "She's the one who picked you. You know, she thinks you're appropriate. Good family. Good grades. Good breeding stock." She said the last words with obvious distaste. "Ethan doesn't date who he wants. He dates who his mother tells him to date." I filed that information away for later. "Then why is he with you?" I asked, keeping my voice soft and curious. "If his mother wouldn't approve." Tiffany's smile turned sharp. "Because I'm not asking him to leave you. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just fun." She shrugged. "He'll get bored eventually. And then he'll go back to being mommy's perfect little boy. That's how it always works." "And what about you? What do you get out of it?" For a moment, something flickered in Tiffany's eyes. Something dark and hungry and desperate. "Satisfaction," she said finally. "Knowing that I can take something from someone who has everything." She stood up, gathered her books, and walked away. I sat there for a long time, thinking about what Shed said. She wasn't in love with Ethan. She didn't even like him. Probably. She was using him, just like he was using her. They were both users. Both manipulators. Both incapable of caring about anyone but themselves. And I was going to destroy them both. The day before the final exam, I put the plan into motion. I found Tiffany in the student lounge, scrolling through her phone. A half-empty thermos of sitting on the table beside her. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Can I ask you something?" She looked up, wary. "Depends on what it is." Ethan's been really stressed about the exam. I've never seen him like this. He can't focus. He can't sleep. He's barely eating. I let my voice tremble. Just a little. I'm really worried about him. Tiffany's expression softened, almost against her will. "He'll be fine. He's a good student. He's not eating." I repeated. "I thought maybe. I know you make that for him sometimes. Maybe you could make him some tomorrow morning, before the exam, just to calm his nerves." Tiffany's eyes narrowed. "Why don't you make it?" "I'm not as good as you. And he loves yours." I smiled, self-deprecating. "I'm not going to pretend I'm not jealous." "Okay, I am. But I love him more than I hate the situation. If you can help him, I want you to help him." Tiffany studied me for a long moment, searching for the lie. I let her look. I let her see my vulnerability, my pain, my sacrifice. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll make him some." but I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I actually care about him. Of course, I said, and I smiled. The next morning, I showed up at Tiffany's apartment at 6 a.m. She looked surprised to see me, standing in her doorway in her pajamas, her hair messy and her eyes bleary. What are you doing here? I thought I could help, I said, holding up a bag of groceries. I bought fresh tapioca pearls, the good kind, from that Asian market in Chinatown. Tiffany stared at the bag, then at me, then back at the bag. You're really going all out with this, aren't you? I told you. I love him. She snorted, but she stepped aside to let me in. Her kitchen was small and cluttered, but clean. She had the ingredients laid out on the counter: milk, tea leaves, sugar, and a jar of something brown that looked like caramel. What's that? I asked, pointing at the jar. Brown sugar syrup. My grandmother's recipe. She picked up the jar and held it out to me. Smell. I leaned in and inhaled. It smelled like caramel and vanilla and something else I couldn't identify. Something almost spicy. Good. Right. She set the jar down and started measuring ingredients. Okay. Here is what we need to do. First, we brew the tea. Then we add the milk and sugar. Then we let it cool while we make the tapioca pearls. Got it. Got it. We worked together in surprisingly comfortable silence. Tiffany was focused, efficient, moving around the kitchen like she'd done this 100 times. I stayed out of her way, handing her ingredients when she asked, keeping up a stream of harmless small talk. So, where did you learn to cook? I asked, as she stirred the tea. My grandmother. She's from Taiwan. She used to make for me every day after school. Tiffany's voice softened, and for a moment, she looked almost human. She died last year. Cancer. I'm sorry. It's fine. She taught me everything I know. She added the milk to the tea, stirring slowly. This recipe is hers. She said the secret is in the timing. Too long and the tea gets bitter. Too short and it's weak. I nodded, pretending to be fascinated. The tapioca pearls were the last step. Tiffany poured them into the boiling water, setting a timer on her phone. 3 minutes, she said. Not a second more. While her back was turned, I reached into my pocket and pulled out Leo's vial. My hands were steady. My heart was calm. I'd been waiting for this moment for 2 months. And now that it was here, I felt nothing but cold. Clear purpose. 3 drops. I uncapped the vial and let the liquid fall into the pot of brewing pearls. The drops disappeared instantly, absorbed by the bubbling water. I recapped the vial, slipped it back into my pocket, and picked up a spoon. These look great, I said, stirring the pearls casually. You're really good at this. Tiffany turned around, a smile on her face. Thanks. It's not hard once you get the hang of it. She finished pouring it into a thermos and screwing the lid on tight. You want to bring it to him? She asked, holding out the thermos. No, I said, shaking my head. You should. He'll appreciate it more coming from you. Tiffany's eyebrows rose. You're really not jealous. I'm really not. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she shrugged, tucked the thermos under her arm, and headed for the door. See you at the exam, she said. See you there. The door closed behind her. I stood in her kitchen, surrounded by the mess of ingredients and dirty dishes. And I allowed myself one small smile. The trap was set. All I had to do now was wait. The library was packed. It was the day before finals, which meant every desperate student in a 10-mile radius had descended on Harvard's various study spaces like locusts on a wheat field. The main reading room was standing room only. The cubicles on the second floor had been claimed since dawn. Even the basement, which normally smelled like mold and hopelessness, was full of people hunched over laptops. their faces illuminated by the glow of spreadsheets and case briefs. But the study room on the third floor was reserved. ID booked it 2 weeks ago, using a fake name and a burner email address. ID invited 12 people, the core members of our con law study group, plus a few peripheral friends who might be useful as witnesses. Ethan was there. Of course. Had shown up early, looking tired but confident, his hair still damp from the shower. And Tiffany was there, too. She'd arrived 10 minutes after me, the thermos of, clutched to her chest like a baby. "Hey, everyone," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "I brought. Who wants some?" A chorus of enthusiastic responses. Tiffany's had become something of a legend in our study group. People fought over the last cup. I watched from my seat in the corner as Tiffany poured them into paper cups and handed them out. She gave one to Ethan first. Of course she did. And he took it with a smile that made my stomach turn. "Thanks, Tiff," he said. "You're a lifesaver. Anything for you," she replied, and her eyes flicked to me. I smiled. I watched Ethan drink. The first sip, then another, then a long, deep swallow that emptied half the cup. "Good?" Tiffany asked. "Amazing," he said. "Best one yet." The study session lasted 3 hours. We ran through case after case. Marbury v. Madison, Brown v. Board, Roe v. Wade, drilling the facts and the holdings and the dissents until my head spun. Ethan was quiet for the first hour, then increasingly restless. He shifted in his seat, crossed and uncrossed his legs, pressed a hand to his stomach. "You okay?" I asked, leaning over to murmur in his ear. "Yeah, just." He swallowed hard. "Something I ate. Maybe you should take a break." "No, I'm fine." He straightened up, forcing a smile. "Let's keep going." But he wasn't fine. Over the next 2 hours, he got progressively worse. His face turned pale, then greenish. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He excused himself to the bathroom 3 times, each time gone longer than the last. By the time the study session ended, he looked like death warmed over. "Are you sure you're okay?" I asked, packing up my books. "You really don't look good." "It'll be fine," he said, but his voice was weak. "Just need to sleep it off." Tiffany hovered nearby, her expression worried. "Maybe you should see a doctor." "It's just a stomach bug. It'll be fine by morning." He stood up, swayed, and grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. "I'm going home. Mia, you coming?" "I'll be there in a bit. I want to review a few more things." He nodded, gave me a weak smile, and shuffled out of the room. Tiffany watched him go, then turned to me. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice low. "Nothing. Bullshit. I saw you in my kitchen this morning. You did something to that." I met her eyes, and I let her see nothing. No guilt, no fear, no triumph. Just blank, empty calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're lying." "Am I?" I stood up, slinging my bag over my shoulder. "Maybe he's just sick." "Tiffany. Maybe all that stress and cheating finally caught up with him." Her face went white. "I know about you and Ethan," I said, keeping my voice casual. "I've known for weeks. I've seen the texts. I've seen the photos. I know everything." "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to see how far it would go." I stepped closer to her, close enough to see the fear flickering in her eyes. And because I wanted to make sure that when it all came crashing down, there would be witnesses. The was made by you, handed to him by you, in front of 12 people. If he's sick, it's your fault. I smiled, and it felt like a knife. Have fun explaining that to the ethics committee. I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there with her mouth open. The exam was the next morning, I arrived at the hall early, taking my seat near the front. Ethan was already there, looking worse than he had the day before. His skin was gray, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was clutching his stomach like he was afraid it might fall out. "You should have stayed home," I whispered, as he lowered himself into the chair next to mine. "I can't miss this exam," he said, his voice hoarse. "I fail this. I fail the class. So reschedule. Talk to the dean." "There's no time." He pulled out a pen, his hands shaking. "I'll power through." The proctor, a stern-faced woman in a tweed blazer, called for silence and began handing out the exam booklets. I looked around the room. Tiffany was sitting 3 rows behind us, her face pale, her eyes fixed on Ethan's back. She looked guilty. She looked scared. Good. The exam began. For the first 45 minutes, everything was normal. The scratch of pens on paper, the rustle of pages being turned, the occasional sigh of frustration from someone who'd hit a difficult question. I was focused on my own exam, working through the essay questions methodically, when I heard Ethan make a sound. It was small at first, a soft groan, barely audible over the general noise of the room. Then louder, a gasp, followed by a wet, choking sound. I looked up. Ethan's face was the color of chalk. Sweat poured down his forehead, dripping onto his exam booklet. His hands were pressed flat against the desk, knuckles white, as if he was trying to hold himself in place. "Ethan," I whispered. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer. His eyes were wide, unfocused, staring at something I couldn't see. And then he vomited. It was violent and sudden and horrifying. One moment he was sitting upright, and the next he was bent over his desk, retching up a flood of brown liquid that splattered across his exam booklet and dripped onto the floor. Gasps. Shrieks. The sound of chairs scraping back as people scrambled away from him. The proctor rushed over, her face a mask of alarm. "Someone call 911. Ethan kept vomiting, even when there was nothing left in his stomach. His body kept heaving, dry and desperate, like it was trying to expel something that didn't want to come out. Then his eyes rolled back in his head, and he started to seize. His body went rigid, then started convulsing, his arms and legs jerking spasmodically. His head hit the desk with a sickening thud, and blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. The room erupted into chaos. People were screaming, crying, pushing toward the exits. The proctor was on her phone, her voice high and panicked. Someone, I didn't see who, was trying to roll Ethan onto his side to keep him from choking on his own vomit. I sat in my seat and watched. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched. And I felt nothing. The paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. They loaded Ethan onto a stretcher, still seizing, still bleeding, and wheeled him out of the room. The exam was canceled. We were told to go home and wait for further instructions. I gathered my things, walked out of the hall, and found Tiffany standing by the door, her face the color of sour milk. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I didn't do anything." "Liar." Her voice cracked. "You killed him. He's not dead. He could be." I shrugged. "Then I guess you'll have to live with that." She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. "I'll tell them. I'll tell them you were in my kitchen. I'll tell them you helped me make the—" "Go ahead," I said, pulling my arm free. "Tell them. But remember, you're the one who handed him the cup. You're the one who's been sleeping with him behind my back. You're the one with the reputation for breaking up relationships." I smiled. "Who do you think they'll believe?" She stared at me, her eyes wide with horror and hatred. "I'm going to destroy you," she said. "You can try." I walked away, leaving her standing there in the shadow of the exam hall. And I didn't look back. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and fear. I'd come because it was expected of me. Because the devoted girlfriend always shows up when her boyfriend is in the hospital. Because anything less would raise suspicions I couldn't afford. Ethan's parents were already there when I arrived. Caroline Reed was a tall, thin woman in her early 50s, with iron gray hair and the kind of face that looked like it had never smiled. She was wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. And she was speaking to a doctor in low, urgent tones. Ethan's father, Richard, stood behind her, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. He was the kind of man who let his wife do the talking. ID always found that a little pathetic. Mia. Caroline spotted me and broke away from the doctor, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. Thank you for coming. Of course. I let my voice tremble. How is he? They don't know yet. They're running tests. She pressed her lips together, and I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Not fear. Exactly. Anger. They said he had a seizure. A bad one. He's unconscious. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. She reached out and patted my arm, her touch cool and dry. The police are here. They think someone might have put something in his drink. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my face neutral. What? That's crazy. Who would do that? That's what they're trying to find out. Caroline's eyes narrowed. That girl. The one he's been spending time with. Tiffany. She gave him some kind of tea yesterday. The police are questioning her now. I widened my eyes, feigning shock. Tiffany. But she's our friend. She wouldn't. She's a transfer student from California with a history of behavioral issues. Caroline's voice was sharp. I had my assistant run a background check. She was accused of stalking at her previous university. Did you know that? I didn't. But I filed the information away for later. No, I said, shaking my head. I had no idea. Caroline studied my face for a long moment, as if searching for something. Then she nodded, seemingly satisfied. You should go home. Mia, get some rest. I'll call you when there's news. Are you sure? I want to be here when he wakes up. He might not wake up for a while. And frankly, she paused, choosing her words carefully. There's nothing you can do here. Go home. Study. Take your mind off things. I hesitated, playing the part of the reluctant girlfriend. Then I nodded, hugged her briefly, and walked out of the hospital. The moment I was outside, I pulled out my phone and called Leo. It's done, I said, when he picked up. Heard about the seizure on the news. His voice was tight. That wasn't supposed to happen. Mia. 3 drops were supposed to cause mild neurological symptoms, not a full-blown seizure. Maybe he has a pre-existing condition. Maybe he didn't sound convinced. Or maybe someone else got to that before you did. I stopped walking. What do you mean? I mean, my compound causes nausea, vomiting, and confusion. It doesn't cause seizures. Something else triggered that reaction. He paused. Did you see anyone else near that? Anyone who might have added something? I thought back to the morning in Tiffany's kitchen. The open jars. The unattended ingredients. The 5 minutes Tiffany had been gone to get something from her car. Maybe, I said slowly. I'll look into it. Be careful. Mia, this is bigger than you think. He hung up. I stood on the sidewalk, my phone pressed to my ear, and stared at the hospital across the street. Someone else had been in that kitchen. Someone who wanted Ethan to have a seizure. Someone who wanted him to fail that exam. But who? And why? The police questioned me the next day. 2 detectives, a man and a woman, both in plain clothes, showed up at my apartment at 9 in the morning. I invited them in, offered them coffee, and answered their questions with wide-eyed innocence. Where were you the morning of July 14th? The female detective asked. I was at Tiffany's apartment. She was making. For our study group. I helped her. Why did you help her? Because she's my friend. And because I wanted to learn her recipe. I shrugged. It seemed like a nice thing to do. The male detective flipped through his notebook. Tiffany claims you had access to the, while her back was turned. She says you might have put something in it. That's ridiculous. I let my voice rise. Indignant. Why would I hurt my own boyfriend? Some people might hurt someone they love if they felt betrayed. I stared at him, my eyes wide. Betrayed. Ethan and I have a great relationship. We don't keep secrets from each other. The female detective exchanged a glance with her partner. We also found some concerning social media posts. She said, pulling out her phone. Tiffany Bates appears to have a history of interfering in other people's relationships. Does that surprise you? I shook my head slowly. I knew she was flirtatious. But I didn't think she was capable of hurting anyone. We're not sure she is. But we have to follow the evidence. The detective stood up, slipping her phone back into her pocket. Thank you for your time, Ms. Chin. We'll be in touch if we have more questions. I walked them to the door, waved goodbye, and closed it behind them. Then I leaned against the door and let out a long, slow breath. They didn't suspect me. Not really. Tiffany had pointed a finger in my direction. But she was the one with the history. The motive. The opportunity. She was the one who'd handed Ethan the. She was the one who'd been sleeping with him behind my back. I was just the wronged girlfriend. The victim. The one everyone felt sorry for. It was the perfect cover. Ethan woke up 2 days later. I went to see him as soon as I got the call, rushing to the hospital with a bouquet of flowers and a concerned expression. He looked terrible. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow, his skin pale and clammy. But he was awake. And he smiled when he saw me. Hey, babe, he said, his voice weak. You came. Of course I came. I set the flowers on the bedside table and sat down in the chair next to his bed. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. He closed his eyes, wincing. The doctors said someone put something in my drink. Some kind of chemical. They're not sure what. Do they know who? He shook his head. They're questioning Tiffany. She's the one who made the. Do you think she did it? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened his eyes and looked at me. And I saw something there I hadn't seen before. Doubt. Uncertainty. I don't know, he said finally. I thought I knew her. But now, you don't have to decide anything right now. I reached out and took his hand, squeezing gently. Just focus on getting better. We can figure out the rest later. He squeezed back, his eyes filling with tears. You're too good to me. Mia, I don't deserve you. No, you don't. I thought. But I smiled and leaned over to kiss his forehead. Get some rest, I said. I'll be here when you wake up. I stayed for an hour, holding his hand and making small talk, playing the part of the devoted girlfriend. When he finally fell asleep, I slipped out of the room and walked down the hallway to the elevator. The doors opened, and I nearly collided with Caroline. Mia. She looked surprised to see me. I didn't know you were here. I came as soon as I heard he was awake. I stepped into the elevator, and she followed. He seems better. Still weak, but better. Good. She pressed the button for the ground floor. The police called this morning. They've arrested that girl, Tiffany. My heart leaped, but I kept my face neutral. Arrested. For what? Aggravated assault. They found traces of an unidentified substance in her kitchen. They're testing it now to see if it matches what was in Ethan's system. I nodded slowly, as if processing the news. I don't know what to say. I can't believe she would do something like that. Neither can I. Caroline's voice was cold. But she did. And she's going to pay for it. The elevator doors opened, and we stepped out into the lobby. If you need anything, I said. Anything at all. Please let me know. I want to help. Caroline studied me for a moment, her eyes sharp and assessing. Then she nodded. Thank you. Mia, you're a good girl. She paused. Ethan is lucky to have you. I smiled, said goodbye, and walked out of the hospital. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and somewhere across the city, Tiffany Bates was sitting in a jail cell, wondering how her life had fallen apart so quickly. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt happy. Instead, I felt nothing. The news spread fast. By the time I got back to campus, everyone knew about the arrest. The student-run newspaper had already published an article. Con law student hospitalized. Classmate arrested for assault. And the comments section was a cesspool of speculation and outrage. I avoided the main paths, sticking to the side streets and back alleys that would get me to my apartment without running into anyone who wanted to talk. But Leo was waiting for me when I got home. He was sitting on the steps of my building, a brown paper bag in his hand, his expression grim. We need to talk, he said. Not here. I unlocked the door and pulled him inside. My apartment. Now. We climbed the stairs in silence. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't tell if it was from adrenaline or fear or something else entirely. Inside, I locked the door behind us and turned to face him. Did you see the news? He asked. I saw it. They found traces of a compound in Tiffany's kitchen. Not mine. Something else. Something that could have caused the seizure. I stared at him. What are you talking about? He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. It was a lab report, dense with scientific jargon. But one phrase jumped out at me. Beta blocker. Propranolol. Propranolol is a heart medication. Leo said. It's used to treat high blood pressure and anxiety. But in high doses, combined with certain other substances, it can cause seizures. I didn't put that in the... I know. Leo ran a hand through his hair, but someone did. And hair aced the thing. Tiffany's kitchen didn't have any propranolol in it. The cops found a vial of saline solution that they thought was suspicious. But it was just saline. The real propranolol wasn't there. Then where is it? That's what I'm trying to figure out. He sat down on my couch, his head in his hands. Mia. Someone else was in that kitchen. Someone who wanted to make sure Ethan's reaction was worse than what you planned. I sat down next to him, my mind racing. I saw something. I said slowly. The morning we made the... Tiffany left for 5 minutes. She said she forgot something in her car. Did you see anyone else? No. But the kitchen has a back door. Someone could have come in while she was gone. Leo looked up. Who would want to hurt Ethan? I don't know. His mother. She's controlling. But she loves him. She wouldn't. Wouldn't she? Leo cut me off. You said she picked you for him. What if she decided you weren't good enough? What if she wanted someone else? I thought about Caroline's cold eyes, her sharp voice, the way she had patted my arm like I was a piece of furniture she was considering buying. It's possible, I said, but I need proof. That's not all. Leo reached into the brown paper bag and pulled out a thick file folder. I did some digging. On Tiffany. On her history at UCLA. He handed me the folder. And I opened it. Inside were printouts of social media posts, emails, text messages, Tiffany's Finsta account, where she'd bragged about stealing other girls' boyfriends, screenshots of conversations with ex-boyfriends, where she'd laughed about the pain she'd caused. But there was something else, too. Something I hadn't expected. Venmo transactions. Tiffany had been receiving regular payments from an anonymous account. The payments started 3 months ago, right around the time she'd transferred to Harvard. And they were marked with a single phrase. Operation Exposure. I scrolled down, looking for the name attached to the bank account. Mrs. Caroline Reed. My blood went cold. Caroline was paying her. I whispered. She was paying Tiffany to seduce Ethan. Leo nodded grimly. And when that didn't work fast enough, she upped the stakes. She added the propranolol to make sure Ethan had a seizure, to make sure he failed his exam, to make him vulnerable and dependent on her. But why? Why would a mother do that to her own son? Because she's a narcissist. Lea's voice was flat. She doesn't love Ethan. She loves controlling him. And you were getting in the way. I stared at the Venmo transactions, my mind reeling. All this time, I thought I was the one pulling the strings. I thought I was the mastermind, the puppet master, the one in control. But I was just a pawn. We all were. Ethan, Tiffany, me. We were all pieces on Caroline Reed's chessboard. Now what? I asked. Now we decide what kind of person you want to be. Leo looked at me, his eyes steady. You can walk away. Let the cops figure it out. Tiffany will take the fall. And Caroline will get away with it. No. I'm not letting her win. I stood up, clutching the file folder to my chest. I'm going to destroy her. Just like I destroyed Ethan. Just like I destroyed Tiffany. Mia. She killed me. Leo. The words came out before I could stop them. In another timeline. In another life. She killed me. And I'm not going to let her do it again. Leo stared at me, his expression shifting from concern to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. What are you talking about? I took a deep breath. And then I told him everything. Tiffany was released on bail 3 days later. I went to see her at her apartment. The same apartment where where ID planted the saline vial. Where everything had started to go wrong. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hair was greasy. And she was wearing the same sweatpants Shed had on the day of her arrest. What do you want? She asked, when she opened the door and saw me standing there. I want to talk. We have nothing to talk about. We have everything to talk about. I pushed past her into the apartment. And she didn't stop me. Close the door. She hesitated. Then she closed it. We stood in her living room, facing each other like two boxers in a ring. I know about Caroline, I said. Tiffany's face went white. What? The payments. The Venmo transactions. Operation Exposure. I know she was paying you to seduce Ethan. Tiffany's knees buckled. She sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face. How did you find out? It doesn't matter how I found out. What matters is what we're going to do about it. She looked up, her eyes wide. What do you mean? We've both been played. I sat down next to her, close enough to see the tears streaking her cheeks. Caroline used you to break up me and Ethan. And when that wasn't enough, she poisoned her own son to make it look like you did it. I didn't poison him. I know. I reached out and took her hand. But the cops don't. They think you're the one who put the propranolol in they. And unless we do something, that's what they're going to keep thinking. Tiffany stared at me, her expression shifting from fear to confusion to desperate hope. What do you want me to do? I want you to help me take her down. The plan was simple. We would record Tiffany's confession, not to the poisoning, but to the affair. We would post it online, along with the screenshots of Caroline's Venmo payments. And then we would go to the police with everything we had. But we needed one more person. Chloe Whitmore was the daughter of a federal judge, a tall, elegant girl with dark hair and a sharp tongue. She was also the girl Caroline had wanted Ethan to marry instead of me. We met her at a coffee shop in Harvard Square, away from campus, away from prying eyes. You want me to help you destroy Caroline Reed? Chloe asked, stirring her latte. Why would I do that? Because she tried to use you. I said. She wanted you to marry Ethan so she could control your family's connections. She doesn't care about you. She never did. Chloe's eyes narrowed. And you care about me. I care about justice. I slid a folder across the table. Take a look. She opened the folder and read through the evidence. The Venmo transactions. The Finsta posts. The lab reports linking Caroline to the propranolol. When she looked up, her expression was cold. What do you need me to do? The confrontation happened at the country club. Caroline had organized a brunch to celebrate Ethan's recovery, inviting family, friends, and anyone else who mattered in Boston society. It was the perfect stage. We arrived together. Me, Tiffany, and Chloe, and took our seats at the table. Caroline was at the head of the table, holding court like a queen among peasants. She smiled when she saw us, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Mia, so glad you could come. Her gaze shifted to Tiffany, and the smile faltered. I'm surprised to see you here. I wouldn't have missed it, Tiffany said, her voice steady. Ethan was sitting next to his mother, still pale and weak, but awake and alert. He looked at me, then at Tiffany, then back at me, confusion written all over his face. What's going on? He asked. Chloe stood up. Mrs. Reed, she said, her voice ringing out across the room. Would you like to explain why you paid another woman to seduce your own son? And why you poisoned him to make it look like an accident? The room went silent. Caroline's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. I stood up, pulling out my phone. Let me refresh your memory. I played the video. Tiffany's face appeared on the screen, tear-streaked but determined. Caroline Reed paid me to seduce her son, she said. She sent me money every month through Venmo. She told me to get close to him, to make him fall for me, to break up his relationship with Mia. The room erupted into whispers. Caroline's face turned from white to red. That's a lie, she spat. She's a liar. She's trying to ruin me. Then explain this. Chloe held up the Venmo screenshots, passing them around the table. Explain why you sent Tiffany Bates over $5,000 under the name Operation Exposure. Caroline's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Ethan stared at his mother, his face a mask of horror. Mom, he said, his voice cracking. Is that true? Ethan. I can explain. Did you pay her to sleep with me? I was trying to protect you. From what? Ethan's voice rose to a shout. From Mia. From being happy. From having a life that wasn't controlled by you. Caroline stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You ungrateful little. Sit down. Caroline. Richard's voice was quiet, but it cut through the chaos like a knife. Sit down and shut up. Everyone turned to look at Ethan's father. I've known about the payments for months, Richard said, his face gray. I was hoping you'd stop. I was hoping you'd come to your senses. He looked at his son, his eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry, Ethan. I should have said something sooner. The room was silent. And then the police arrived. Caroline was arrested for aggravated assault, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. She screamed and fought as the officers handcuffed her, her perfect facade crumbling into something ugly and desperate. You'll regret this, she shrieked, as they led her out of the country club. All of you. You'll regret this. But no one was listening. Ethan sat at the table, his head in his hands, while his father tried to comfort him. Chloe stood by the window, watching the police cars drive away. Tiffany was crying. Real tears this time, not the fake ones Shed used to manipulate Ethan. And I stood in the corner, watching it all unfold, feeling nothing. It was over. Or so I thought. 3 months later, I graduated, top of my class, summa cum laude, a dozen job offers from law firms across the country. It should have been the best day of my life. And then I saw Ethan in the audience. He looked terrible, had lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes that no amount of sleep could fix. He was alone. No father. No friends. No one to cheer for him. Had been expelled. Of course. The university had revoked his admission after the scandal broke, citing conduct unbecoming of a Harvard student. He was living with his father now, working a dead-end job at a copy shop, trying to rebuild a life that had been shattered by his mother's machinations. I walked across the stage, accepted my diploma, and turned to face the audience. Ethan was staring at me, his eyes hollow and lost. And I mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." His face crumpled. He stood up, turned around, and walked out of the auditorium. I watched him go, and I felt a flicker of something I hadn't expected. Pity. He was a victim too. I realized. Not as innocent as me. Not as blameless. But a victim nonetheless. His mother had manipulated him his entire life, and had been too weak to see it. Too weak to fight back. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I walked off the stage, collected my diploma, and went to find my friends. The party was at Chloe's apartment. Shed decorated with streamers and balloons. And there was a cake that said congratulations. Esq. In gold letters. Tiffany was there, looking happier than I'd ever seen her, laughing with a group of people I didn't recognize. Mia. Chloe waved me over. You did it. You're officially a law school graduate. Officially. I agreed, accepting a glass of champagne. Chloe's smile faded. Did you see Ethan in the audience? Yeah. That was brave. What you did. Coming up here and facing him. I wasn't being brave. I took a sip of champagne. I was being honest. Chloe nodded slowly. So what now? What's next for the girl who got revenge on everyone who wronged her? I thought about it. I don't know. I said, maybe I'll write a book. Or become a defense attorney. Or move to a remote island and never talk to anyone again. Chloe laughed. Those are very different options. I'm a woman of many talents. We clinked our glasses together and drank. The party went on for hours. People danced. People talked. People ate too much cake and drank too much champagne. It was loud and chaotic and wonderful. And then, as the night was winding down, I went to check my mail. The letter was in a plain white envelope. No return address. My name was written in careful, old-fashioned handwriting. The kind you learned in finishing school. The kind that belonged to someone who cared about appearances. I opened it. 1 sentence. Typed on a single sheet of paper. You think you've won. But you don't know what I did to you the first time. My blood ran cold. I read the sentence again. And again. Caroline. She'd written it from jail. She'd found a way to send me a message. Even from behind bars. And she knew something I didn't. Something about the original timeline. Something about my death. What had she done to me the first time? I folded the letter, slipped it into my pocket, and walked back to the party. I smiled. I laughed. I celebrated with my friends. But in the back of my mind, a new plan was forming. Caroline Reed thought she could threaten me. Thought she could scare me. Thought she could make me live in fear of what she might have done. She was wrong. Because ID already died once. And ID come back. And if she wanted to play games, I was ready to play. To be continued. The Suffolk County House of Correction was a gray stone monument to human failure. Caroline Reed had been housed there for 73 days. Ever since her dramatic arrest at the country club brunch that had ended her social standing and her freedom in one spectacular afternoon. She had her own cell now. A medical accommodation for her anxiety. Which was just a polite way of saying she'd paid the right people to keep her away from the general population. Her cell was small but clean. A bed. A sink. A toilet. A narrow window that let in a sliver of gray Massachusetts sky. And a desk, where she sat every evening from 7 to 9, writing letters. She wrote to her lawyers. She wrote to her husband. Not that Richard ever wrote back. She wrote to old friends who had stopped returning her calls. And sometimes, when the mood struck her, she wrote to the people who had put her here. Like Mia-chan. The letter Shed sent to Mia was short. Just one sentence. But it had taken her 3 days to compose. Drafting and redrafting in her neat, old-fashioned handwriting until the words said exactly what she wanted them to say. You think you've won. But you don't know what I did to you the first time. Shed sealed it, mailed it, and then spent the next week waiting for a response that never came. Not that Shed expected one. Mia was smarter than that. Smarter than Caroline had given her credit for. That was her mistake. She realized now. Underestimating the girl. She wouldn't make that mistake again. The visitor's room was a fluorescent-lit cavern of plastic chairs and vending machines. Caroline sat at a table near the back, her hands folded in front of her, waiting. She was dressed in the standard orange jumpsuit, but Shed managed to accessorize. A cashmere cardigan Shed bribed a guard to bring her, and a pair of pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother. She believed in facing adversity with dignity. The door opened, and a woman walked in. She was tall and striking, with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair. She was wearing a well-tailored pantsuit and carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's rent. Her name was Deborah Vance, and she was one of the most powerful criminal defense attorneys in Boston. She was also Caroline's secret weapon. Mrs. Reed. Deborah sat down across from her, setting her briefcase on the floor. You look well. Prison agrees with me. Caroline's smile was thin. No social obligations. No fundraisers. No pretending to care about people I despise. Deborah's lips twitched. I have news. Good news. I hope. It depends on your definition of good. Deborah pulled a file from her briefcase and opened it. The prosecution has offered a plea deal. 3 years. Minimum security. In exchange for a guilty plea to aggravated assault. 3 years. Caroline's voice was flat. I'd rather die. I thought you might say that. Deborah closed the file. So I explored other options. There's a possibility of arguing entrapment. Your son's girlfriend, Mia-chan. She manipulated the situation. She planted evidence. She poisoned your sons. She didn't plant the propranolol. I did. I know. But the prosecution doesn't have to know that. Deborah leaned forward, her voice dropping. We can make the case that Mia-chan was the mastermind. That she manipulated Tiffany Bates. That she coerced you into acting out of concern for your son. That she. I don't want to blame Mia. Deborah blinked. Excuse me. I don't want to blame her. Caroline's voice was quiet but firm. She's not the villain here. I am. And I'm tired of pretending otherwise. Deborah stared at her for a long moment. Mrs. Reed. With all due respect. I know what you're going to say. You're going to tell me that my best chance at freedom is to throw someone else under the bus. That Mia-chan is vulnerable. That she has no connections. That no one will believe her over me. Caroline smiled. But there was no warmth in it. You're probably right. But I've spent my entire life throwing people under buses. My husband. My son. Anyone who got in my way. And look where it's gotten me. Deborah said nothing. I'm not going to do it anymore. Caroline said. I'm going to plead guilty. I'm going to serve my time. And when I get out, I'm going to be a different person. Is that what you want me to tell the judge? It's what I want you to tell my son. Caroline's eyes glistened. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I love him. Tell him I never meant to hurt him. Deborah nodded slowly. I'll tell him. Thank you. The attorney stood up, picked up her briefcase, and walked toward the door. She paused with her hand on the handle. Mrs. Reed. Yes. Why did you really do it? The payments to Tiffany. The propranolol. All of it. Deborah turned to look at her. What were you trying to accomplish? Caroline was quiet for a long time. I was trying to protect him. She said finally. I know that sounds like a lie. It sounds like every other parent who's ever done something terrible and called it love. But it's the truth. She looked down at her hands, at the pearl earrings, at the cashmere cardigan, at the orange jumpsuit underneath. Ethan was always too soft, too trusting. He fell in love with every girl who smiled at him. And every time, I had to clean up the mess. And Mia was different. Caroline's voice softened. She wasn't like the others. She didn't care about the money or the connections. She loved him. Actually loved him. And that terrified me. Why? Because if she loved him, and he loved her, then what was I supposed to do? What was my purpose? She looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I've spent 30 years being Ethan's mother. It's the only thing I'm good at. And if he didn't need me anymore, you would have to figure out who you were without him. Yes. Caroline's voice was barely a whisper. And I didn't know how to do that. So I tried to tear them apart. I told myself it was for his own good. I told myself she wasn't good enough for him. That she'd drag him down. That she was just using him like all the others. She laughed, bitter and hollow. But she wasn't. She was the best thing that ever happened to him. And I destroyed it. Deborah stood there, her hand still on the door handle, her expression unreadable. The judge will probably ask you to say something at sentencing, she said finally, about why you did what you did. Will you tell him the truth? Caroline nodded. I'll tell him everything. Then I'll do my best to get you the best deal I can. Deborah opened the door. Try to get some sleep. Mrs. Reed. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. The door closed behind her. Caroline sat alone in the visitor's room, staring at the empty chair across from her. She thought about Mia, about the girl she'd tried to destroy, about the girl who had destroyed her instead. And she thought about the letter she'd sent, the one sentence that would haunt Mia for the rest of her life. You think you've won, but you don't know what I did to you the first time. It was a lie. Of course. She hadn't done anything to Mia the first time. She hadn't known about the time loop, about the crash, about any of it. But Mia didn't know that. And as long as Mia believed there was more to the story, as long as she lived in fear of what Caroline might have done, Caroline would still have power over her. It wasn't justice. It wasn't revenge. It was just the last, desperate move of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Caroline stood up, straightened her cardigan, and walked toward the door that would take her back to her cell. She had a long time to think about what she'd done, and an even longer time to think about what she'd do next. Across the city, in a small apartment on Mass Avenue, Mia Chin was staring at the same letter. She'd read it 100 times since it arrived. The words were burned into her brain, looping over and over like a song she couldn't turn off. You think you've won, but you don't know what I did to you the first time. What did it mean? What had Caroline done? And how had she known about the first timeline? The one where Mia had died. The one that was supposed to be a secret. Mia had told no one. Not Leo. Not Chloe. Not Tiffany. Not even her therapist. The time loop was her burden to carry alone. But Caroline knew something. Or at least, she wanted Mia to think she knew something. That was the problem with people like Caroline Reed. They didn't need to have the truth. They just needed you to believe they did. Mia folded the letter and slipped it into the drawer of her nightstand, next to the vial of Leo's compound and the screenshots of Ethan's texts. She would figure it out eventually. She always did. But for now, she had other things to worry about, like the job offer from a law firm in New York, like the relationship she was trying to build with her mother, who had no idea her daughter had died and come back to life, like the therapy sessions where she tried to explain the nightmares without sounding crazy. The letter would have to wait. But Caroline wouldn't. Caroline was patient. Caroline had nothing but time. And Mia had a feeling this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The dream always started the same way. Rain on the windshield. Headlights coming from the wrong direction. The screech of tires. The shatter of glass. And then nothing. Just darkness and silence and the terrible, endless weight of being dead. But lately, the dream had changed. Now, when Mia closed her eyes, she saw Caroline. Not the Caroline from the country club. The one in the cream-colored pantsuit with the cold eyes and the sharper tongue. No, this Caroline was different. This Caroline was standing over a hospital bed. And on that bed was MIA's own body. Pale and still and broken. And Caroline was smiling. You were never good enough for him. The dream, Caroline said, her voice echoing in the empty room. Not in this life. Not in any life. Mia woke up gasping, her hands clutching the sheets, her heart hammering against her ribs. It was 3 a.m. Her apartment was dark and quiet, the only light coming from the street lamp outside her window. She could hear her neighbor's TV through the wall. Some late-night talk show. Laughter track too loud. Applause too enthusiastic. She reached for her phone. No messages. No missed calls. Just the same emptiness she'd been waking up to for weeks. The letter was still in her nightstand drawer. She'd read it so many times the paper had started to soften at the folds. You think you've won. But you don't know what I did to you the first time. She needed answers. And there was only one person who could give them to her. Leo answered on the 3rd knock. He looked terrible. His hair was even messier than usual. And there were dark circles under his eyes that matched MIA's own. He was wearing a bathrobe over what looked like pajama pants and a t-shirt that said, I am a chemist. Not a miracle worker. Mia. He blinked at her. Confused. It's 3 a.m. I know. She pushed past him into the apartment. We need to talk. Leo's apartment was small and cluttered, filled with stacks of scientific journals and empty pizza boxes. A laptop was open on the coffee table, displaying a spreadsheet full of numbers Mia didn't recognize. About what? Leo closed the door and followed her into the living room. Did something happen? Is it Caroline? It's about the first timeline. Mia turned to face him. The one where I died. Leo's face went pale. Mia, you didn't believe me before. When I told you about the crash. About waking up in the past. About all of it. You thought I was crazy. I didn't think you were crazy. Leo sat down on the couch, running a hand through his hair. I thought you were traumatized. There's a difference. I'm not traumatized. I'm haunted. Mia sat down next to him, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. Caroline sent me a letter. She said she did something to me the first time. Something I don't remember. So ask her. I can't. She won't see me. I've tried. Leo was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, walked over to his laptop, and typed something. I've been doing some research, he said, about time loops, about people who claim to have lived the same life twice. And most of them are crazy, but some of them. He paused, scrolling through the spreadsheet. Some of them have documented physical changes. Changes that shouldn't be possible. What kind of changes? Neurological. Increased activity in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory. Changes in skin conductivity. Even, in a few cases, changes in DNA methylation. He turned to look at her. Whatever happened to you? Mia, it wasn't just in your head. It left a mark. MIA's heart skipped a beat. Can you test me? See if I have any of those markers. I already did. Leo pulled a folder from his desk and handed it to her. I took a blood sample while you were sleeping last week. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I didn't want to worry you if the results came back negative. And Leo's expression was grim. They didn't come back negative. Mia opened the folder. Inside were pages of lab reports, dense with medical jargon. But one phrase jumped out at her: elevated methylation patterns consistent with repeated exposure to temporal displacement events. What does that mean? She asked. It means your body remembers dying. Leo's voice was quiet. Your cells. Your DNA. They've been through something that changed them at a fundamental level. Something that shouldn't be possible. Caroline. I don't know if Caroline caused it, but she knew about it. Somehow. She knew. Mia closed the folder. Her hands shaking. What do I do now? She asked. Leo looked at her. And for the first time since she'd known him, he looked scared. I don't know, he said, but I think you need to find out what happened to you the first time, before whatever's coming happens again. The Suffolk County House of Correction was even uglier in person than it looked on TV. Mia stood outside the main entrance, her hands in the pockets of her jacket, staring up at the gray stone walls. She'd called ahead, filled out the paperwork, waited 3 weeks for approval. Caroline didn't want to see her, but Mia had rights. And Caroline, despite everything, was still a human being who could be compelled to accept visitors. Not that Mia was going to compel her. She was going to ask nicely. And if that didn't work, she was going to lie. The visitor's room was exactly as depressing as she'd imagined. Plastic chairs, vending machines, fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered, a guard at the door with a bored expression and a gun on his hip. Mia sat down at a table near the back and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. She was starting to think Caroline had refused after all when the door opened and Caroline Reed walked in. She looked different than Mia remembered. Smaller. Somehow. The orange jumpsuit drained the color from her skin. And without her usual armor of expensive clothes and cold confidence, she looked almost ordinary. Mia. Caroline sat down across from her, folding her hands on the table. I have to admit, I didn't expect you to come. I didn't expect to be here. Mia leaned back in her chair, studying the older woman's face. You look tired. I'm in prison. Tired is the least of my problems. They stared at each other across the table. Two women who had tried to destroy each other and failed. Why did you send that letter? Mia asked finally. Caroline's expression didn't change. Because I wanted you to know. Know what? That you're a liar. That you're trying to scare me. That you have nothing left except the ability to make vague threats from behind bars. I'm not threatening you. Caroline's voice was quiet. I'm warning you. MIA's blood ran cold. Warning me about what? Caroline leaned forward, her eyes boring into MIA's. The first time. The timeline you don't remember. Something happened. Something I didn't understand until recently. Something that's going to happen again if you're not careful. What's something? I don't know exactly. I only know what I saw. Caroline's voice dropped to a whisper. After you died. The first time you died. I went to the hospital. I wanted to see your body. I wanted to make sure you were really gone. MIA's stomach turned. Why? Because I was the one who killed you. The words hung in the air between them. Heavy and terrible. Mia stared at Caroline, her mind racing. What do you mean? You killed me. The crash. The other driver. The one who ran the red light. Caroline's eyes were bright with unshed tears. That was me. Mia. I was the one behind the wheel. MIA's world tilted. She remembered the headlights. The bright, white headlights coming straight at her from the wrong direction. The screech of tires. The shatter of glass. She'd always assumed it was an accident. A drunk driver. Someone had made a terrible mistake. But it wasn't. It was Caroline. You tried to kill me. Mia whispered. I tried to scare you. Caroline's voice cracked. I wanted to run you off the road. Make you think twice about dating my son. I didn't mean to hit that tree. I didn't mean to. To what? Kill me. MIA's voice rose. You drove your car into mine and you killed me. And then you let everyone think it was an accident. It was an accident. Caroline's tears were falling now, streaking her cheeks. I didn't plan it. I just wanted to. I don't care what you wanted. Mia stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You killed me. You killed me. And then you let me wake up in a world where no one knew what you'd done. The time loop. Caroline's voice was barely a whisper. That was me too. I didn't know it at the time. But I have a condition. A neurological condition. When I experience extreme emotional distress, I can affect reality. Mia stared at her. What are you talking about? There's a name for it. Temporal displacement syndrome. It's rare. Only a few dozen cases documented worldwide. But I have it. Caroline wiped her tears with the back of her hand. When I killed you, I was so full of guilt and fear and self-loathing that I broke something. The timeline. And when it put itself back together, you were alive again. In the past. With all your memories intact. That's not possible. Neither is time travel. Neither is coming back from the dead. But here we are. Caroline looked up at Mia, her eyes red and swollen. I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know any of this was possible. But now I do. And so do you. Mia sat back down, her legs weak. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because it's going to happen again. Caroline's voice was urgent. The timeline is unstable. Every time someone with TDS experiences a major emotional event, the timeline fractures. And there's someone out there. Someone who knows about me. Someone who's been watching. Who wants to use that power for their own purposes. Who? I don't know. I've never seen their face. But they've been sending me messages. Letters. Just like the one I sent you. Caroline reached into the pocket of her jumpsuit and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This came yesterday. Mia took the paper and unfolded it. The handwriting was different from Caroline's. Sharper. More angular. Like it had been written by someone in a hurry. Mrs. Reed, you think you're the only one who can bend time. You're not. You're just the catalyst. The first domino. And when I'm done, every domino in the world is going to fall. Be ready. TT. Mia read aloud. Who's T? I don't know. But they're not done with me. And they're not done with you. Caroline leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Mia, I know you hate me. I know you have every reason to want me dead. But right now, we have a common enemy. And if we don't work together, they're going to destroy everything. Mia looked at the letter. Then at Caroline. Then back at the letter. She thought about the first timeline. The one she barely remembered. The one that ended with her body on a hospital bed and Caroline's car wrapped around a tree. She thought about the second timeline. The one Shed created. The one where Shed gotten revenge on everyone who'd wronged her. And she thought about the third timeline. The one that was coming. Whether she wanted it or not. I'll think about it, she said finally. She stood up, folded the letter, and slipped it into her pocket. Mia, Caroline called out, as she walked toward the door. Mia turned. Be careful, Caroline said. Whoever T is, they've been watching you longer than you know. Mia nodded, opened the door, and walked out. The rain had started again by the time she got outside. Mia stood in the parking lot, letting the water soak through her jacket. Her hair, her skin. She closed her eyes and tilted her face up to the sky. She thought about the headlights, about the crash, about waking up in her bed on May 15th with a second chance and a plan for revenge. She thought about Caroline, sitting in her cell, crying real tears for the first time in years. And she thought about the letter. About the mysterious T who could bend time. Who wanted to watch the dominoes fall. She didn't know who T was. She didn't know what they wanted. But she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The rain followed Mia home. It tapped against the windows of her apartment. A persistent, insistent rhythm that matched the pounding in her head. She'd been sitting on her couch for 3 hours. The letter from T spread out on the coffee table in front of her, surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled pieces of paper. Shed read the letter so many times she'd memorized it. Mrs. Reed, you think you're the only one who can bend time. You're not. You're just the catalyst. The first domino. And when I'm done, every domino in the world is going to fall. Be ready. T. Who is T? Someone who knew about Caroline's condition. Someone who knew about the time loop. Someone who had been watching. Waiting. Planning. Someone who had probably been watching Mia. 2. The thought made her skin crawl. She reached for her phone and dialed Leo's number. It went straight to voicemail. Leo. It's Mia. Call me back. It's urgent. She hung up and stared at the screen. 3 missed calls from Chloe. 2 from her mother. 1 from a number she didn't recognize. She ignored them all and called Tiffany. Tiffany answered on the second ring. Mia. It's almost midnight. I know. I need you to come over. Now. Now. There was a pause. Then, is this about Caroline? Partially. Just come. I'll explain when you get here. She hung up before Tiffany could ask any more questions. Tiffany arrived 20 minutes later, wearing yoga pants and a hoodie, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes that hadn't been there a few months ago. But she also looked alert, focused. Prison had changed her, made her harder, made her sharper. What's going on? She asked. Stepping into the apartment, Mia handed her the letter. Tiffany read it, her expression shifting from confusion to concern to something that looked almost like fear. Who's T? She asked. I don't know. But Caroline thinks they're dangerous. Caroline. Tiffany's voice was flat. You're taking advice from Caroline now. I'm taking information from Caroline. There's a difference. Mia sat down on the couch, pulling her knees up to her chest. She told me something else. Something I need to tell you. Tiffany sat down across from her, the letter still in her hand. I'm listening. Mia took a deep breath. The first time. The timeline I don't remember. Caroline was the one who killed me. She ran me off the road. On purpose. Tiffany's face went white. What? She has a condition. Temporal displacement syndrome. When she experiences extreme emotional distress, she can affect reality. Break the timeline. That's how I came back. That's insane. I know. You're talking about time travel. About superpowers. About? I know. MIA's voice rose. I know how it sounds. I know you think I'm crazy, but I'm not. I've lived this life twice. Tiffany. I've died. I've come back. And now there's someone out there. Someone named T. Who wants to use Caroline's condition to destroy everything. Tiffany stared at her for a long moment. Then she set the letter down on the coffee table and leaned back in her chair. Okay, she said. Let's say I believe you. What do? We find out who T is. Before they find us. The first step was research. Mia spent the next 3 days in the Harvard Library, digging through medical journals and obscure databases, looking for any mention of temporal displacement syndrome. There wasn't much. The condition was so rare that most doctors had never heard of it. The few cases that had been documented were dismissed as hoaxes or misdiagnoses. But there was one researcher, a neurologist at Stanford named Dr. Eris Thorne, who had made TDS his life's work. And his first name started with T. Mia stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Eris Thorne. T. It could be a coincidence. It probably was a coincidence. But she had to check. She picked up her phone and dialed the number for Stanford's neurology department. Dr. Thorne's office. A voice said, "This is Rebecca. How can I help you? My name is Mia Chin. I'm a researcher at Harvard. I need to speak with Dr. Thorne about a matter of urgent importance." Dr. Thorne is not accepting new patients. I'm not a patient. I'm a colleague. We have a mutual interest in temporal displacement syndrome. There was a pause. Hold. Please. Mia waited. The hold music was generic and annoying. Some kind of synthesized jazz that made her want to throw her phone against the wall. After 5 minutes, a man's voice came on the line. This is Dr. Thorne. Who is this? My name is Mia Chin. I'm calling about Caroline Reed. Another pause. Longer this time. How do you know about Caroline Reed? Dr. Thorne's voice was guarded. She's the mother of my ex-boyfriend. She told me about her condition. About the time loop. About everything. I see. A pause. And why are you calling me? Because someone is threatening her. Someone who knows about her condition. Someone who signed their letter with the initial T. Dr. Thorne was quiet for a long moment. Where are you? He asked finally. Boston. Stay there. I'm flying out tomorrow. We need to talk in person. The line went dead. Mia stared at her phone. Her heart racing. Dr. Eris Thorne was coming to Boston. And she had a feeling that when he arrived, everything she thought she knew was going to change. The Harvard Faculty Club was the kind of place where old money went to pretend it wasn't old money. Mia had never been inside before. The dark wood paneling. The overstuffed leather chairs. The portraits of long-dead presidents staring down from the walls. It felt like stepping into a museum. Or a tomb. Dr. Thorne was waiting for her in a private dining room at the back of the building. He was taller than she'd expected, with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He was wearing a tweed jacket over a button-down shirt. And he had the kind of face that looked like it had seen too much and forgotten too little. Ms. Chin, he said, standing up as she entered. Thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing me. They sat down across from each other at a small table. A waiter appeared, poured coffee, and disappeared. You said on the phone that someone is threatening Caroline Reed. Dr. Thorne said. Tell me everything. Mia told him. About the letter. About the mysterious T. About Caroline's warning that the timeline was unstable. She left out the parts about her own time loop. She wasn't ready to share that yet. But she told him enough. When she finished, Dr. Thorne was quiet for a long time. I've been studying TDS for 20 years. He said finally. I've documented 14 cases. Caroline Reed is the 15th. 14 cases. I thought it was rarer than that. It is rare. But it's also underreported. Most people with TDS don't know they have it. They think they're having hallucinations. Or seizures. Or psychotic breaks. They don't realize they're actually affecting reality. How do you diagnose it? I don't. Not officially. There's no medical test. No diagnostic criteria. Nothing that would hold up in a peer-reviewed journal. I rely on self-reporting and observation. He paused. And on letters like the one Caroline received. You've seen letters like that before. Many times. Dr. Thorne reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick file folder. I've been collecting them for years. Threats. Warnings. Cryptic messages from someone who calls themselves T. I've never been able to trace them. The handwriting changes. The paper changes. The postmarks change. But the message is always the same. He opened the folder and spread the letters out on the table. Mia read them. Her stomach churning. You think you're special. You're not. You're just a tool. The timeline is a thread. I'm going to cut it. When the dominoes fall, you'll be the first to go. The handwriting was different in each letter. Sometimes neat and precise. Sometimes messy and rushed. But the signature was always the same. A single letter. T. Who is this person? Mia asked. What do they want? I don't know. Dr. Thorne's voice was grim. But I know what they're capable of. 3 of the TDS patients I've studied are dead. Suicide. The police said. But I saw the letters they received before they died. The same threats. The same warnings. You think T killed them? I think T is trying to destabilize the timeline. And I think the best way to do that is to eliminate anyone who can affect it. He looked at Mia, his eyes sharp. Caroline Reed is in danger. And so are you. Why me? I don't have TDS. No. But you're connected to someone who does. And that makes you a target. Mia sat back in her chair, her mind spinning. She'd thought the letter was a threat. A warning. Something to scare her. To make her paranoid. But it was worse than that. It was a promise. Leo finally called back that night. Sorry, I missed your calls, he said, his voice tired. I've been in the lab. Something came up. Something came up. Leo, I've been trying to reach you for days. I know. I'm sorry. It's just. He paused. I found something. In your blood work. Something I missed before. MIA's heart skipped a beat. What kind of something? Remember how I said your DNA showed markers of temporal displacement? I ran those markers through a database. A private database. Not one that's available. And I got a match. A match to what? To Caroline Reed. MIA's blood ran cold. What? Your DNA and Caroline's DNA share markers that shouldn't be possible. It's like you're connected. Like whatever happened to her. Happened to you too. That doesn't make sense. We're not related. I know. That's what's so strange. Leo's voice was urgent. Mia, I think Caroline did more than just affect the timeline. I think she tied you to her. I think she made it so that whatever happens to her happens to you too. Mia thought about the letters. About T. About the threats. If someone kills Caroline, she said slowly. What happens to me? There was a long silence. I don't know, Leo said finally. But I don't think you want to find out. That night, Mia didn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything she'd learned. Caroline had killed her. Caroline had brought her back. Caroline had tied their fates together in ways neither of them understood. And now someone was hunting Caroline. Someone who wanted to destabilize the timeline. Someone who had already killed 3 people with TDS. If they killed Caroline, they might kill Mia too. Or worse. She thought about Dr. Thorne. About his file full of letters. About the fear in his eyes when Head talked about T. She thought about Leo. About the match in their DNA. About the terrifying possibility that she and Caroline were connected forever. And she made a decision. She wasn't going to wait for T to make the next move. She was going to find them first. The next morning, Mia went back to the prison. Caroline was waiting for her in the visitor's room, looking even smaller than before. The orange jumpsuit hung off her frame like a sack. And there were new lines on her face that hadn't been there a week ago. You came back, Caroline said. Surprised. I need to ask you something. Mia sat down across from her. Do you know anyone named Eris Thorne? Caroline's face went pale. How do you know that name? He's a neurologist at Stanford. He studies TDS. He's been collecting letters from T for years. I know who he is. Caroline's voice was tight. He's the one who diagnosed me. Years ago. Before Ethan was born, he told me about my condition. About what I could do. He said I was special. He said you were a tool. Caroline's eyes widened. What? TS letters. The ones Dr. Thorne has been collecting. They say the same things over and over. You're not special. You're just a tool. Mia leaned forward. Caroline. I think Dr. Thorne is T. Caroline stared at her. That's impossible, she said. He's the one who helped me. He's the one who taught me to control my condition. Or he's the one who's been manipulating you all along. Caroline shook her head, but her hands were trembling. No. You're wrong. He's a good man. He's the only person who knew about your condition before the letters started. He's the only person who had access to all those TDS patients. He's the only person who could have sent those letters without leaving a trace. Mia, Think about it. Caroline. Think about everything he's told you. Everything he's asked you to do. Has he ever asked you to use your condition to affect the timeline? Caroline's face went white. He asked me to practice, she whispered. To push myself. To see how far I could go. He said it was for science. For research. And when you killed me, the first time, was that an accident? Or was he there? Caroline's eyes filled with tears. He was there, she said. He was in the car with me. He told me to do it. He said it would prove my power. MIA's blood boiled. Dr. Eris Thorne wasn't a researcher. He wasn't a doctor. He was a manipulator. A puppet master. Someone who had been using Caroline for years. Pushing her to break the timeline. To see how far she could go. And now he was coming to Boston. Mia called Chloe on the way home. I need your help, she said. And I need you to trust me. Always. Chloe said. What's going on? Mia told her everything. About Caroline. About TDS. About Dr. Thorne. About the letters. The threats. The 3 dead patients. When she finished, Chloe was quiet for a long time. You're asking me to help you investigate a Stanford neurologist who might be a serial killer, she said finally. Yes. And you want me to do this, why? Because you're the only person I know who has access to federal databases. Your father is a judge. You have connections I don't. Chloe sighed. My father is going to kill me. Not if Dr. Thorne kills us first. Another pause. Then, fine. I'll see what I can find. But you owe me. Big time. I know. Mia hung up and stared out the window. Dr. Eris Thorne was flying to Boston. He wanted to meet with her. He wanted to talk. But Mia had no intention of talking. She had every intention of trapping him. The plan was simple. Mia would meet with Dr. Thorne at the faculty club, just like they'd arranged. But this time, she wouldn't be alone. Chloe would be in the next room, recording everything. Leo would be outside, ready to call the police if things went wrong. And Caroline would be on the phone, listening from her prison cell. Mia arrived at the faculty club at 7 o'clock, dressed in a simple black dress that made her look older, more serious. Dr. Thorne was already there, sitting at the same table as before. A cup of coffee in front of him. Ms. Chin. He stood up as she approached. Thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing me. They sat down. The waiter appeared, poured coffee, disappeared. I've been thinking about what you told me, Dr. Thorne said. About the letters. About T. And I think I may have some information that could help. What kind of information? The kind that could save your life. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. I know who T is. MIA's heart raced, but she kept her face neutral. Who? Her name is Teresa. Teresa Whitmore. She's a former patient of mine. She has TDS. Like Caroline. But unlike Caroline, she's dangerous. Unstable. She's been threatening other patients for years. Teresa Whitmore. Whitmore. Like Chloe Whitmore. MIA's blood ran cold. Teresa Whitmore, she said slowly. Any relation to Judge Whitmore? His sister. Dr. Thorne's voice was grim. She's been institutionalized for years. But she's been sending letters from inside. Threats. Warnings. The same kind of letters Caroline received. Why are you telling me this? Because I think she's going to try again. And I think you're her next target. Mia stared at him, her mind racing. Teresa Whitmore. Chloe's aunt. Institutionalized. A TDS patient who threatened other patients. It fit. It all fit. Except for one thing. How do you know all this? Mia asked. If she's been institutionalized, how do you have access to her records? Dr. Thorne smiled. It was a cold smile, empty of warmth. Because I'm her doctor, he said. And I've been feeding her information for years. MIA's blood turned to ice. Your tea, she said. No, Dr. Thorn shook his head. I'm not tea. I'm something much worse. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small syringe. I'm the one who created tea. Mia didn't have time to scream. Dr. Thorn lunged across the table. The syringe aimed at her neck. She dodged, but not fast enough. The needle grazed her arm. Drawing blood, the room spun. The walls seemed to shift, to breathe. Don't fight it, Dr. Thorn said, his voice echoing strangely. The compound I just gave you. It's a gateway. ITLL help you see what I see. The timeline, the fractures, the truth. Mia tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. She tried to speak, but her tongue felt like lead, the last thing she saw. Before the darkness swallowed her was Dr. Thorn's face, and the cold, empty satisfaction in his eyes.